It's hard to speak my heart because you know who is joining me for the 90th episode of You Know What. The This episode of the Inspiration Show is extremely special because not only is it the 90th, but because the incredible Max Chernin is joining me. Max is truly one of my favorite people and performers and has such a special impact on my life and my theater journey. Max, it is so truly special to have you here and such an honor. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So, when did you discover that you had a passion for singing and theater?
Good question. I tried everything else out as a kid. I tried all the sports and everything in that genre. And it wasn't until I went to like Montessori school summer camp, where it was very much about like interpretive learning, that I got thrown into the musical section and loved it. And kind of just went from there, started taking acting classes and started finding my people in the theater community. Um, and yeah, I haven't left since. So
The greatest, I always say, the greatest gift that I've ever been given was getting bit by the theater bug.
yeah,
It's the best gift.
yeah.
So, what would you say really inspired you to become a performer, and who has been an inspiration of yours throughout your career?
Um, I think once like somebody somewhere down the road validated that I was like good at it or should be doing it, it just felt so good to be a part of something bigger than myself. Um, and I also just I love storytelling. I love being a vessel for human emotion. Um, and more, I love being a part of something that forces people to get off their phones, get off their screens, sit down and witness something that I hope and I believe is still pretty magical. But I think it's just such an important art form and space and event to keep happening for all of us. And what's the second part of your question?
Anyone who's inspired you specifically?
Anyone who's inspired me. I'll say it, and he'll always deny it. But I grew up doing theater with an actor, Andrew Kober, and when I was in eighth grade and he was a senior in high school, I was Smee to his Captain Hook at a local youth theater, and I just watched him. I watched his trajectory happen. It was like went to college, then he like went right into the tour of spelling bee, and then he did hair. And I just saw that and I wanted to be that. So Kober always inspired me. And we've since worked together and I've tried to tell him, and he's like, "You're stupid."
Oh, I was gonna
I can't
say
picture.
the
Yeah.
both of you are like shining stars on Broadway now. That's so full circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So, can you take us back to the first time you experienced theater and how you were feeling at the time?
Interesting. My parents took me to like the children's theater shows at the Cleveland Playhouse. And I remember just being fascinated by I don't even know if I can describe it, but the space itself, and then being in a room where the lights went down and something kind of magical happened. And I just remember loving it. But I think like memorable performances, I convinced my parents to let me go see Rent when I was in second grade.
How'd you do that?
I was jealous of my cousins were going, and they were maybe
Oh.
2 years and 4 years older than me. And my
Mhm.
parents had a long debate about it. And I sat in the back of some theater in Cleveland, maybe the one we're even going to, on a booster seat. And I saw Rent. And all I know, like it, subject matter definitely went over my head, but the music, I bought that there. They made a double CD Rent, and I bought it there. And my aunt, I was like, my mom will pay you back. I have to have this. Um, and I just remember just like being so captivated by that story and that show. And I know every word and could do it in its entirety, 100%. Yeah.
No, I relate to that so much because I was in the exact same shoes with Dear Evan Hansen. It passed through
Cool.
Toronto when I was 11, and I begged my mom. I was like, I need to go, and she's
Uh-huh.
like, the subject matter, let's not. And then she went into further consideration after many hours of me begging, and she's like, okay, you're very mature. I'll take you.
Yeah.
And that was really how I fell in love with theater. And then, growing up when I started the podcast, I got to connect with Evan Hansen cast members and I got to perform alongside them. And they became like a second family, just like the Parade family did. And I told my mom, I was like, if you said no when I was 11, like I probably wouldn't be a theater major in school, probably wouldn't have started the podcast, wouldn't have fallen in love with theater. And it's amazing to see how, we try so hard to convince our parents. And when they say yes, it changes our life. It's just theater is magic.
Yeah. Yeah. We're very fortunate to have parents that said yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so special because you're stopping in Cleveland on the tour, so that must be so incredibly special for you to perform it.
Yeah. It's going to
Yep.
be really wild. It's going to be really
Yeah.
wild. Yeah.
Oh,
There's a night that my dad has arranged for 40 people to come. And I'm pretty sure like every night, some music teacher of mine or someone I did theater with or someone I went to high school with is going to be there. And that's just really cool and special. And to do it with Parade is just the
yeah.
icing on the cake for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw the picture that they posted of you standing under the
Yeah.
marquee and I was sobbing.
Oh, yeah. It was really special. I happened to be there for like an anniversary celebration of the youth theater that I grew up. And the marketing was like, can we snag you for a few minutes? It was really fun. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So, fast forward to now, you've been a part of three Broadway shows. So, let's start at the beginning when you made your
Sure.
Broadway debut in Bright Star,
Mhm.
originating the role of Max. I love
Yeah.
that. Max is originating the role of Max.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
was that experience like for you, both in terms of originating a role and stepping onto a Broadway stage for the first time?
Sure. I could not have asked for a more dreamy debut than that. I got to be with the show for its out of town tryout in San Diego. And then we went to the Kennedy Center and then we came back to Broadway. And that was just so dreamy in itself. The old Globe in San Diego, such a dream job. You're working inside of a national park, you bike to work, it's sunny. I was like, this is the actor's life. And to watch though that team like craft and create the show was I could just sit there and watch them all day. It was Walter Bobby and Josh Rhodes and Steve Martin and Edie Brickell and Rob Berman. And we just had this powerhouse, all the designers, like it was just it was so cool. But I always say like the jump from somewhere else that you're doing theater to Broadway is just that there's a million more dollars. There's so much money and there's so many more people, but it's always the same thing. You just elevated and being supported across the board. Um, but yeah, to be a part of an original musical, to tell that story, to watch Carmen like ascend into this role that was that put so much of herself into it. It was just so special. Yeah, and then Matt to play Max. Max is named after me, because and like okay, so there's a very quick costume change that needed to be covered. So they wrote a role. There's like a little bookstore scene, and he's the like nerdy boy that can't get the girl, and like thus Max was born. And it was we did a reading in between San Diego and DC, and my name was just there because they wanted me to read it that day, and then it just stayed.
It just stayed Max. Oh, I love that.
So yeah, it's
That's
very cool.
like I always say, whenever you step into a role, you make your mark, whether you're originating it or not, but you really
Yeah,
made your mark on that one.
I really did. I really did. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And what was that like for you, because I feel like with Broadway, we see like revivals like Parade and, stepping into roles that have already been played or already been developed. But for you, you originated a role on your Broadway debut. So what was that kind of like for you, kind of having to do that for the first time in a role that nobody's ever touched but you?
It was really satisfying and felt really right for me. I when I graduated college with my classmates, I felt so lost, and I felt like I wasn't gonna make it, which in hindsight is like such a silly thing, but like four of my classmates went into Book of Mormon. Another one of my classmates was standing by for Raven Simone in Sister Act. Another one of my classmates went right off on the Evita tour. And I was just like cooking for a little bit. It was, like there wasn't like a something that already existed that I could like hop right into. Um, so to arrive in a place where someone was like, I see you, and what you have is like cool enough to be its own thing on its own, like it was just cool. I was like, I'm doing this original show, original role, and this is my moment. This is my moment on Broadway. This is my big professional debut. And that just made it really satisfying and validating, I think. Cause yeah. Now granted, like I'm so spoiled that like my graduation to Broadway for me was like 3 years, which like you like for me, I thought it was an eternity because my friends were like this. I also my two best friends from home are Ben Fankhauser and Corey Cott, and they were both in Newsies at the time. So like it was just a skewed vision for me. I was like, it's a month out of school and I'm still not on Broadway, but it was worth the wait, is what I'm saying.
But
Yeah,
you did it, and it
yeah,
was perfect.
yeah.
So you were also part of the Broadway production of Sunday in the Park with George. How would
Was
you describe your time and experiences being part of that iconic and beloved show?
that was kind of unbelievable. I was just pinching myself the entire time because that's a dream show of mine, and to get to work with Sondheim and to be around him and try to be able to talk to him. I we had maybe one little social occasion with him, and I just like didn't even know what to say really. Um, but to just feel that show with a full orchestra and singing it next to everyone is really, really special and emotional. Um, because at base, I think it is my favorite one, probably one of my favorite musicals, if not my favorite musical, because of what it's saying about art and what it means to be an artist. And that being a part of that and telling that story and seeing how much it meant to a lot of audiences that came was like really special. And I actually also I originated a Sondheim role because I was the first human to play the second soldier. There's two soldiers in the show, and historically, it's been a cardboard cutout, or in the projected version from Donmar, it was a projection. But I was the first human to play the role. So technically, I originated a Sondheim role, even though it was mute. But I am the first human soldier number two. So
That's insane, and I love
yeah,
it. I didn't know that.
that's some fun little trivia for you. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's gonna be on Jeopardy one day. I'm gone.
Yes.
They've been starting to do all these like Broadway like categories, and I'm living for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, most recently, you starred in the Tony Award-winning revival of Parade, portraying Mr. Turner while understudying Leo Frank and Hugh Dorsey. What was it like being part of bringing this meaningful story to light and exploring it from multiple different perspectives by portraying various characters?
Sure. It was, I mean, Parade's another one of my favorite musicals, and I think it's pretty perfect. I can kind of stand by that. Um,
I'm with you on that.
yeah, It's Hard to Speak My Heart was one of the first things I ever sang with a voice teacher. And it's the score, this show is just so special. And when I got the audition, I sent in a tape for a different role, but I said to my agent, I was like, I want to be a part of this. I just want to be a part of this. I would love to be in the ensemble or do anything. And I was so fortunate that that bounced back, and I got the chance again to, it's similar to Sunday, to sing some of this stuff that you just like really feel in your body. Like that opening, the Old Red Hills of Home, is just so powerful and was so wonderful, and just such a gift to be able to do that. And that was really my first big theater thing after the pandemic. I hadn't done something at that level, And so it was super emotional for me. It was super emotional for a lot of folks in the show to come back and do this and tell that story specifically. Um, but yeah, and knowing three different roles is wild.
Mhm.
Um, Learning Leo was so special, and learning Dorsey was terrifying. And um, I had to step. They're just like the villain and the hero, and it was just a special, challenging time. Yeah, it was really very just can't say more about it. And now I get to do it again.
Yeah, like it's just so special. Like there's never gonna be a sequence of words that any of us can string together about how incredibly special that show is. Every time I talk about
Yeah,
it, I feel like I'm just rambling and rambling because it's such a perfect show that you can't encapsulate it with words. And I can't imagine what that experience must have been like for you. Like you said, those roles are so different from each other because especially when you're telling a real life story and you're looking at it from different perspectives, I can't imagine how you got in and out of that headspace and kind of like put on all those different hats.
yeah, yeah. It was pretty special. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been with Parade since its off-Broadway run at New York City Center. Then you transferred with the show to Broadway, and makes me the happiest person in the world to say you're now leading the tour as Leo Frank. So
Yeah.
having experienced the production at different stages and spent so much time with both the story and these characters, how has your perspective on the show and your performance evolved?
Good question. I think the the more we sit with it and the more the world changes, I'm we're changing the way that we're telling the story. Unfortunately, we are living in a time where there's a direct correlation to this specific story and what this story has to say and where our world is at this time. So it was evolving the whole time that we were going from City Center to Broadway. And it was so special. Michael and the whole team just created a space where it was important for us to be addressing these issues and talking about these issues. And so like in a way I feel like I grew, I evolved. We all grew and evolved, and the show began to mean so much to so many different people in so many different ways. And I think it was really like our perspective that started to shift, and being able to stand behind what we were saying, like being able to stand behind something 100% and say, this is an important story to be telling, is just so gratifying. And I can't wait to do it again. I can't wait to bring it on the road. And our circumstances have yet changed again. And I think I'm so looking forward to bringing in this new cast and seeing how the material sits on them, or seeing what perspective they might have to share, because ultimately we want to fold in like who they are into the mix of this world, of this town. And it's so important to have everyone's ideas and everyone's personality represented on the stage so that we look like real human beings, turns out.
It's so special, and I want to ask from an actor's perspective, what is it like for you? Like you said, you're playing real people, but you're bringing yourself to it as well while still paying homage to the people that actually lived it. How did you approach it, knowing that you're playing a real person and telling a real story that actually happened?
Sure. So, especially with Leo in particular, there's a huge book. Where is it? It's a giant textbook. It's the nonfiction book, And the Dead Shall Rise. And
Yes,
there's
I
a bunch of other source documents that spoke on his physical behavior, his physical being. So you start with what you have,
mhm.
and you look at pictures, and you start with some of these facts and things, and then you have Alfred's script, which is also wonderful. And then you think about yourself. And for me, it's like, what parts of how do I physically respond to anxiety? How do I physically respond to grief or terror, or being misunderstood? And where is that line where you're threading yourself together, where you like are meshing your idea of who this person is with your with who you are and your response to these things. But it's definitely like it's a little heady, but it's wonderful and something that was allowed to be in that space because of Michael, because of our production stage manager Justin, and our associates Emilio and Matthew and Caroline, our dance captain. Were just like, yes, more, more, more. And that is just so special, I think. Yeah.
It's so timely and so beautiful to think and associate these events that happened 100 years ago now. And you see how timely and important they are today. And having it be shed light on stages now on tour all across the country, it's so beautiful to see how people kind of take that in. And I think what was so special for me is when I was leaving the theater after seeing Parade for the first time, I saw an elderly couple on their phone Googling Leo Frank, and I said, "If one person does that, we've done our jobs in telling the story." And I'm just so forever grateful that I got to be
Yeah.
even the smallest part of the show and telling that story. I always say to everyone that I know that's been part of Parade, it's probably one of the greatest things we will ever do is shedding awareness to this story.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really, I mean, it's just wild how in the American history textbooks, it might be like a little paragraph. And there's so much more within that paragraph. And um, you should read this book if you have time. It's very long, but just talking about the first time we're seeing like propaganda in the media, weaponizing journalism, which is trickling down to where we are now. Like I think of Fox News and all of this, like New York Post, just all of these lies and propaganda that aren't
Yeah.
bringing information to the people or the masses. They're bringing opinion, and it's
Mhm.
it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just so, so special too that you get to bring it to Georgia where it all
Yeah.
unraveled. And that's going to be an incredible experience for you as Leo. I have tears in
Yeah.
my eyes just thinking about it.
Yes. I do hope so. Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there in Atlanta. And I do hope to visit some of the historical sites as well. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's awesome. So, how does it make you feel to be telling this story? What elements of the show have inspired you, and what have you taken away from the show lesson wise personally?
I'm most excited to step into this because it's a real human being. And I think the what Alfred and Jason and what how Prince did, I think this is a perfect example of speech into song, of the scene, of every scene needing to sing, of the need to sing. And so I'm just excited to step into that every night, like just being in a place where what I'm saying is evolving every night, where I have to express myself through song, where everything is so deeply connected. It's not just like, here are the words, here are the song. It's like everything's together. Um, I'm excited to show that, to be a part of that, to to get the feedback from the crowd, to get the feedback from my cast on stage. That was such a special thing about our production, having everyone on stage, having their presence, having the energy on you. Um, it's just going to be so special. And in terms of like lessons that I've taken away from the material or from like my experience being an actor in it,
Both. I'd love to hear
both,
anything.
both. Yeah, I guess my experience in an actor in it is it was especially as Mr. Turner, as my onstage track, like focused intensity and specificity, even within the smallest moments, and how much that helped tell the story, whether I knew it or not. I mean, we sat on stage for all of the trial, which was about 30 minutes for 6 months, and I I can't like there was definitely a night I can recall where I was thinking about what I wanted to get from Trader Joe's. And then I like snapped out of it and was like, and you know what I mean? I like scared myself because it wasn't, I was like, I'm not being true. This isn't true. I wasn't telling the truth today, but you know, that comes with doing it 8 times a week. But that was the challenge. Be present, be there, tell the story, like the presence of every person on that stage lifted the text. And I think I learned a lot about that. I learned a lot about trusting myself, especially going on as Leo. Um, yeah, and that was just like a wild 2 nights to step into something I have always dreamed of. And so yeah, walking away knowing that I can do it, I think was pretty cool. Yeah.
I'm just so happy that you get to revisit it and that you are the one
Yeah.
telling the story because you're perfect, the show is perfect, the score is perfect, and the first thing that went to my mind, you're gonna chuckle, after hearing you and Talia sing "This Is Not Over Yet," I was in full tears, and then I finished the video and I was like, "Wait, Max isn't gonna say 'You Know Who.'" He's gonna
Not
talk
gonna be
about
me. I know.
it.
Isn't that funny?
And I was like, "Wait, you're gonna be on the other side of it now." And, like,
I
I think
know.
that's so special for you, you know, to have vision like, the 2 sides of this story and, you know, getting to also study Dorsey. I mean, it's just incredible how you got to view it, and I can't imagine how, like, the studies of the other characters impacted, like, the other characters that you play.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I can't wait to meet the new Mr. Turner.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So, as you now head into the national tour of Parade, taking this powerful and timely story across the United States, how does it feel to step into Leo's shoes and tell his story at such a poignant moment in time?
It feels really special. I think the theater going audience in New York is already kind of tuned in and keyed in to the power of like art and influence and um what art and theater specifically can do to change a person, change their opinion, change their outlook on life, change the way they greet their neighbor. And I just hope that we're able to do that a little bit when we're going across the country. I hope we're just living in a time where we feel like there's so much polarization, but I actually think there may not be as much as we think. Like we're a lot of the same than we are different. And um I also think this show specifically is dealing with anti-Semitism before the Holocaust, and that doesn't really have a platform within theater or with any kind of cultural zeitgeist, truly. Because you think of a Jewish play, you automatically think of a Holocaust play. That's just kind of where we're at because there's a lot in the canon, and that's usually what's going on. Like Anne Frank, every town. But Parade is telling a very, very important story about our country and where a lot of this came from and how it has always been and how it's carrying over. And so I hope that people do get on their phones and Google who is Leo Frank and think about that. And you know, I don't know that someone's gonna walk out there and have a radical shift politically, but I hope that maybe they're surprised. Maybe they went in not not knowing that a Jewish show could affect them in a way, like not knowing that the humanity beneath it all would affect them in the same way, because we're showing a lived experience of a marginalized group in America. And it's my hope that someone's like, oh, I see myself in this story, even though I don't think of myself as being the same. um and maybe we'll get that to happen. We'll see.
I just think it's the most perfect way to tell a story through song and to have it all unfold in front of you. And when it happens in front of you, it truly feels like you're living it. And then when you realize that somebody actually went through it, and the way that Jason's beautiful score just impacts you and Alfred's beautiful words, I mean, you have chills all the way through. And I just think it's so beautifully directed and it's so beautifully sang and told. And I just think theater is the best way to portray a story, and to really have it be as like a wake-up call for people to understand that this really happened and we're here to tell you so history doesn't repeat itself. But, 100 years later, we're still there. And I think that that is the importance of parade. It's that realization and that inspiration to go out and tell these stories, change it. And I love it when people ask me questions about parade or, when I get to talk about the way that it's impacted my life as an actor and as a person. It's so incredibly special.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, do you have a favorite moment in the show and a favorite song to sing that you look forward to revisiting again each night on tour?
Oh yeah. I mean, this is not over yet. It's just like magic. It's magic. It's the moment in the show where like circumstances change and we get to be like, yes, like we start rooting for them. Um, and to be able to sing with Talia and just kind of command that space. It's also the show's like kind of begging for a moment like that
Yeah.
as well. Because the way it's crafted, that pretty much the whole trial, there are moments that you want to be that you want to like. There's a really beautiful song, and you're like, oh, I can't clap because it's still going on.
Yeah.
So there's like that release, that satisfaction of being able to do that as an audience. But my favorite song in the show is Rumblin' and Rollin' at the top of Act Two. I mean,
So good.
I'll get to listen to that every night, and I can't wait because I think that is just such a great tune.
I know, I always tell Douglas, I'm like, "That song." Oh, and then
Yeah,
people ask me, they're like, "What's your favorite song in the show?" I'm like, "I can't pick. I
right,
can't
right.
pick." It's an impossible task to pick a favorite song in that show.
Yeah.
So, what aspects of the show and embodying various characters on Broadway and Parade have brought you the most enjoyment thus far, and what are your aspirations as the show continues its run out on tour?
It's brought me the most joy thus far. I met some really good friends in the Broadway run, and we were able to craft really fun relationships with each other in the few moments that felt fun, like at the party scene. And I don't know, it was just super inspiring for us all to conquer it together. That's how you get through the hard times. That's how you get through the 8 show weeks. We were all there together. We were all these distinct individual characters that came together, and we got to revisit our little plot lines together every night. Um, and what was the second part of that question? Going forward?
Yeah, going forward, what are you excited to, bring back on tour and evolve out on the road?
I'm excited to just get a full stab at this on my own. Um, I'm sure we'll be using kind of like the shell of what we had on Broadway, but really being able to like make a few choices because there were a few things that I asked if I could do when I went on that we couldn't quite do because of like lighting or something. But I think I might be able to do them now. So that would be like
Mhm.
just like little thoughts that I have about the way that things could be interpreted. Um, so I'm just excited to get a stab at it on my own. I think it's going to
Yeah.
be really special, and I think I will feel comfortable to fold more of myself into the role because, to a certain extent, like for lighting and for the sanity of my company, so they're not 100% thrown by someone else being there. Like you kind of have to like shadow the person that you're understudying. You bring yourself there, but you're in their lights and you're in, you're standing where they stand, and you have to hit your marks so that everyone can stay in it and not fall out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Especially
I
with
get to make my own. Yeah.
yeah, like, that show is so intricate, like, choreography-wise and just direction-wise, I can go on how beautiful it was, but the thing that stands out to me the most was the camaraderie, getting to tell a story like that, it's not an easy thing to do, and just the family aspect, I mean, even though I wasn't in the show, like, I felt it so much with the kids, like, they became, like, my older siblings, I got so close with them, and same with the adults, they became, like, parents, I always went them for questions about the industry, and everyone was just so sweet and inspiring and took me under their wing, and for that, I'm just forever grateful because to get to watch them tell a story that meant the world to me was just so special, and I can't wait for you to do it again. It's so special.
Thanks. Thanks.
So, alongside your work as a Broadway star, you ventured into TV and film, off-Broadway productions, regional theater, cabarets, and have been involved with the development stages for various shows. What has wearing so many different hats and being a part of such a wide array of incredible projects taught you as an actor?
Good question. I think some of the best work you do doesn't necessarily have the biggest paycheck. It pays off in different ways. It pays to make your connections, to meet the young composers, to meet the people that want you, that want your voice on their material and work with you. And um, I mean, like Sunday in the Park with George, the music director for that, I did a tiny reading up in Vermont of a Ryan Scott Oliver show for, I don't know, $500 or something. Like they threw us on a bus and took us up to Vermont. But that music director called me for Sunday in the Park. That's Chris Fenwick. Like he rose and he was like, Max would be right. And that's why it's important to do all those things. Um, yeah, and TV stuff is awesome. I just want to do more and more of that. But it's elusive in its way too, because I've done I did a couple episodes on this show called Dickinson, which was great. That was like my first time to go back to set and feel really comfortable. But when you're doing like a 1 day guest star on a TV show, you're kind of shot out of a cannon and it all happens so fast. And sometimes when you get home, like someone will ask you how it was. And there was one that I did. I was like, I think it was good. I don't really know because it was all happening so fast. So I would love to get into a cadence with that where I could like have more memories, like have it be more memorable rather than like a little frantic. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to ask about the development stages. What's it like being
Sure.
part of the development of a musical? Because you were part of the development for Shucked, right?
I sure was. Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to hear all about that and kind of how that it differs from, stepping into a role that's already been written and is ready to go.
Yeah, it's so fun and so great and so heartbreaking. Because sometimes you join a developmental process and you're there because someone trusts you to learn music in a day and help them lift the text, and they're interested in your opinion on it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that when it comes to producing it that you are going to be the right fit for it. But there's nothing more exciting than like hearing something that is going to be really good, like hearing it for the first time or seeing an audience see it for the first time. Shucked was wonderful. I'm really close with Robert Horn, the book writer, so I've had the opportunity to work on Tootsie and to work on Shucked, and he's just such a genius and welcomes us in the room. And I've neither of those experience have been like heartbreaking when they get to the big production level. Um, yeah, there's a couple of I won't mention the other things, but it's you like you believe in something, you're a part of something, and you see that opportunity, and then like it just doesn't quite work out, and that's okay, and you kind of wait for the next one, and you hope that the impression you made on the director or the writer means something to them, and but it's you kind of make some of the best friends in a reading. Like it's this short little thing, 2 weeks or whatever, and then like you keep running into them and then you end up doing a show together and then like suddenly they're your like some of your best friends. And um yeah, I would say in the business, if there's someone I haven't done like a full show with 12 years in now, you're seeing someone, you're like, we did that one reading, and then like you can't figure out what it is, and then a day or two goes by and one of you goes, oh, it was this, and then you're like, yes, that's what we did. We stood next to each other for 3 days, but it's like you're not quite sure where it came from.
Yeah, it's the funniest thing when, like, I post pictures with a friend and, like, other theater friends are like, "Oh, I know that person, we did this show together," and I think it's the funniest thing when you tell non-theater people and they're, like, talking about things and they're like, "How do you know everybody?" I'm like, "The theater community is so small. You've done a show with everybody. Everybody is a friend of a friend, and that camaraderie, it's unlike nothing else. It's the best thing. The theater community has my heart."
Yeah, yeah.
So, out of all the roles you've stepped into, are there a few that particularly stand out to you for specific reasons?
Cool. Yeah, I had the opportunity to do a reading and develop a show up at the Goodspeed Opera House called Passing Through. I did that right before the shutdown in 2019, and it was just I got to originate a role. It was based off a real person. It's about a boy who walked across the country, and everything he learned about himself and all the people he met and all the stories he wanted to tell. Um, and the score was beautiful. It was written by my friend Brett Ryback, and Eric Uola wrote the book. And it to be thought of as the person they wanted to lead that show and lift that text meant so much to me. And then to get into the room and to make it mine, and the keys were like written so that I could sing them, and it was so cool to be a part of a discussion and not like to be told what I was going to be doing. And I got to meet him. The real guy came to the show. Andrew came to the show, and I got to meet him, and we became friends. And it was just really memorable for me because it was the first time I really one of the first times I really felt like I stepped into like a leadership role in a theater space. And um, I carry with me the energy and vibe of anyone that's ever led a show that I've been a part of. So I bring that to the room because I've learned so much from those people. So Carmen Cusack and Annalie Ashford and Dee Hodey and all of these wonderful people that I've watched lead a room, they're my example. And I want to bring that to the room that I'm stepping into. I want to bring that to the parade tour. I want to be that energy and be that person for a cast. It's so special. It's so special.
It's beautiful. Would you say there's a particular project or moment that you feel truly defined you as an artist?
Ooh. Yeah. Yeah. My first like off-Broadway show is this quirky little musical called Brooklynite. It was inspired by the Brooklyn Superhero Supply Company, which is a store in Brooklyn that makes like fun little superhero supplies, and it was also part inspired by a Michael Chabon book, Cavalier and Clay, one of those. And it was Michael Mayer and who did Spring Awakening, and Peter Lerman, my friend, wrote the score. And I was just around incredible people. I got to develop that up at New York Stage and Film, and it was just I got to originate a role, and they saw me for who I was in that moment. Kim Grigsby was the music director, and when I went into audition for that, I was 24, 23, 24. And in my mind, in my post-college mind, I'm a male in musical theater and I needed to sing high. But Kim heard my voice and was like, "What else do you do?" And she found this like beautiful folky baritone song in my book. And I was like, "Oh, sure, I can do that." And then she said, "Always do that." She just validated a natural sound for me, like where I should be sitting. And then I got to do that in a show. And it was just so fun. We were off Broadway. We were like in the basement of the Vineyard Theater, and it was kind of ragtag. But like I was in the room with like Gerard Canonico and Andrew Call and Nick Cordero, God bless him, and Nicolette Robinson, Grace McLean, Matt Doyle, like all these stars. It was just so cool and so fun. So I think that moment was like just super. I just remember feeling really cool, and so yeah,
Well, that's the best.
yeah.
Looking back on everything you have achieved in this industry, what advice would you give your younger self entering the industry?
Ooh, forget everything you heard in college. Be yourself, and encourage real life growth within yourself, because that will bring your material more. I think I wish I knew more about who I was as a 22-year-old when I got to the city, because I think I had blinders on from my BFA program that told me I needed to fit into something, that I needed to fit into Book of Mormon or be a character actor or be a leading man. And I think the the industry has changed. We're celebrating the individual but I don't think I was encouraged to find out what that was. And so going back, I probably would tell myself to travel more, to do some stuff. Oh, travel more, to do some stuff like outside of theater so that when someone called upon me to be a real person, I'm pulling from my experience. I'm pulling from living a life, you know? So yeah, I kind of wish when I graduated, someone was like, "What? You should go to Europe for a year and then come back and do this." So that's probably what I would tell myself.
That's gonna be awesome on tour, though. You get to see all these sights and been to places that you've never seen before and take the most
Totally.
beautiful story with you. So I guess you are traveling more in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Max, thank you so much for joining me on the Inspiration Show. I am so
Sure.
incredibly inspired by you and so grateful to have had you be my guest on the 90th episode. You've
Yeah,
impacted me.
congrats.
Thank you. You've impacted me and my theater journey in such a special way, and it was such an honor to have you here. Thank you for inspiring me.
Thanks for having me.